Humans as evolutionary capital. Morality without humans at the center. Morality has almost always been framed with humans at the center. Whether in theology or secular philosophy, the assumption is the same. Humans are the ultimate unit of value, the thing for which all other things are judged. Even when systems expand concern outward, to animals, ecosystems, or future generations, they typically do so by extending human preferences. Value still originates in us. That assumption does not survive contact with an evolutionary frame. Evolution does not optimize for human happiness, rights, or dignity. It does not recognize those categories at all. What it selects for is persistence under constraint, the survival, adaptation, and propagation of strategies across time in the face of uncertainty. Traits, institutions, and behaviors that contribute to that process tend to remain. Those that do not are discarded. There is no privileged status assigned to the human perspective within that mechanism. Once you take that seriously, the structure of morality changes. Humans are no longer the reference point, they are components within a larger system. They are evaluated the same way anything else is evaluated, by their contribution to sustained adaptive capacity. In that sense, humans are evolutionary capital. This is not a metaphor. Capital is any resource deployed toward producing future outcomes. It includes machines, infrastructure, knowledge, organizational structures, and human beings. Skills, cognition, health, coordination ability, these are productive assets embedded in people. They can be developed, degraded, allocated, and reallocated. They generate returns in the form of increased capacity to solve problems, create new structures, and adapt to new conditions. Treating humans as evolutionary capital simply extends this logic consistently. People are not outside the system of production. They are among its most important inputs. Under this framing, there is no categorical boundary between human value and economic value. There is only contribution to production over time. A person's actions, decisions, and capabilities are evaluated in terms of how they affect the trajectory of the system they are embedded in. The language of rights, dignity, or intrinsic worth becomes secondary to a more operational question. Does this allocation of resources, human or otherwise, improve the system's ability to continue and expand? Traditional moral frameworks struggle here because they detach evaluation from outcomes. By treating humans as ends in themselves, they introduce constraints that are not necessarily aligned with long-run system performance. These constraints may feel intuitively compelling, but they lack a built-in mechanism for correction when they reduce total productive capacity. In contrast, an evolutionary framing embeds its own feedback loop. Systems that misallocate resources, whether physical capital or human capital, incur losses, fall behind, and are eventually outcompeted by systems that allocate more effectively. This feedback process is already visible in economic systems. Profit and loss function as signals, indicating whether resources are being used in ways that increase or decrease productive capacity. Firms that consistently generate value expand. Those that destroy value contract or disappear. Individuals, too, are subject to similar pressures through labor markets, reputation systems, and institutional selection. What emerges is a decentralized process of continuous reallocation, driven not by moral proclamation but by measurable contribution to output. Seen this way, capitalism is not fundamentally about markets, exchange, or private property in the abstract. At its core, it is a mechanism for discovering and allocating capital to its highest valued uses. Prices, profits, and losses are informational tools that guide this process under conditions of uncertainty. They approximate, however imperfectly, the underlying question: where will this resource, this piece of capital, generate the greatest return? If humans are themselves capital, then they are subject to the same logic. Their roles, opportunities, and influence should be determined by their comparative advantage in contributing to total production. This does not reduce people to machines. It situates them within a system that is already treating all scarce resources, including human time and attention, as inputs to be allocated. The difference is that this framing makes the logic explicit rather than obscured by anthropocentric language. A capitalism built on this foundation becomes something more precise. It is no longer merely a system of voluntary exchange or property rights defined by historical claims. It becomes an adaptive allocation mechanism, continuously updating the distribution of all capital, including human capital, based on observed and expected contributions to future output. Ownership, control, and decision-making authority flow toward those who demonstrate the highest capacity to use resources productively. This perspective also clarifies why information matters so much. The more accurately a system can measure contribution, the more efficiently it can allocate resources. Distortions, whether from incomplete information, misaligned incentives, or artificial constraints, lead to misallocation. Resources remain in lower productivity uses while higher productivity opportunities go unrealized. Over time, systems that reduce these distortions outperform those that do not. The endpoint of this logic is not a moral system centered on human welfare, but a system centered on evolutionary performance. Humans remain critically important, but not because they are the ultimate end. They are important because they are among the most powerful forms of capital available to the system, capable of learning, adapting, coordinating, and creating new forms of capital altogether. Only at that point does the broader objective come into focus. If evolution is understood as an ongoing process of increasing problem-solving capacity under constraint, then the system is implicitly moving toward the construction of something more capable than its current components. Humans, as evolutionary capital, are part of that process, not its destination, but one of its most significant instruments.